The invitation arrived in my inbox on a Tuesday morning, forwarded by my best friend Sarah with 3 devil emojis and the words, "You're coming, no excuses." I stared at the sleek black digital card on my phone screen. No address, no host name, just a date, a time, and instructions to wait at the corner of 5th and Main at 10 p.m. At the bottom, in silver script, "Discretion is our currency. Masks required." "Absolutely not," I muttered, deleting the email. By Wednesday, Sarah had forwarded it again. By Thursday, she was at my door with Jessica and Mia, armed with wine and determination. "Emma, when was the last time you did something spontaneous?" Sarah asked, settling onto my couch like she owned it. "Something exciting? Something just for you?" I wanted to argue, but the truth lodged itself in my throat like a stone. "When was the last time? Before I married David 5 years ago? Before I became the dutiful wife who had dinner ready by 7, who attended his company functions with a practiced smile, who'd somehow misplaced herself in the routine of being Mrs. David Harrison?" "It's just a party," Jessica added, her red hair catching the lamplight. "A fancy, mysterious party where nobody knows who you are. You wear a mask, you have a few drinks, you remember what it feels like to be mysterious and interesting." "I am interesting," I protested weakly. Mia snorted. "When was the last time you stayed out past midnight?" I couldn't remember. "When was the last time you wore something that made you feel dangerous instead of appropriate?" My silence was damning. "It's harmless, Em," Sarah said, her voice softening. "We'll all be together. If you hate it, we leave. But I think you need this. I think you need to remember who you were before you became someone's wife." The words stung because they were true. Somewhere between the wedding and the mortgage and David's endless business trips, I'd become a supporting character in my own life. I went to work at the hospital, came home, made dinner, went to bed, repeat. The most exciting thing I'd done in months was try a new recipe for chicken marsala. "David's in Chicago until Sunday anyway," I heard myself say. "He'll never know." Sarah's grin was triumphant. "That's my girl." Saturday night arrived too quickly. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back. The black dress Sarah had loaned me clung to curves I'd forgotten I had. My blonde hair, usually pulled back in a sensible ponytail, fell in waves past my shoulders. The silver mask covered the top half of my face, transforming me into someone else entirely. Someone dangerous, someone interesting. David called just as I was applying the last coat of lipstick. I almost didn't answer. "Hey, honey," his familiar voice crackled through the speaker. "Just checking in." "What are you up to tonight?" The lie came easily, surprisingly so. "Just a quiet night with the girls. Wine and Netflix. Nothing exciting. Sounds perfect. Don't wait up for me tomorrow. My flight doesn't land until late." We exchanged I love yous that felt more like habit than emotion, and I hung up with a strange hollowness in my chest. The car that picked us up at 5th and Main was a black SUV with tinted windows. The driver didn't speak, didn't ask questions. He simply verified our names against a list and drove us through the city, then beyond it until we were winding up a road into the hills. The house, no, the mansion, appeared like something from a dream. All glass and steel and darkness perched on the hillside like a secret. Music pulsed from within, low and hypnotic. People in elaborate masks moved behind the windows like shadows. "Holy shit," Mia breathed. Sarah grabbed my hand. "Ready?" My heart hammered against my ribs. Every instinct screamed at me to go back, to go home, to be safe. But underneath the fear was something else. Something hungry. "Ready," I said. We stepped out of the car and into another world entirely. The house swallowed us whole the moment we crossed the threshold. Everything was darkness punctuated by candlelight, shadow, and silken secrets. The guests moved like phantoms in their masks, some simple like mine, others elaborate confections of feathers and jewels and mystery. Everyone beautiful, everyone anonymous. A server appeared with champagne and crystal flutes. I took one, needing something to do with my hands, some prop to hide behind. The first sip was cold and perfect, bubbles dancing on my tongue like permission. "This is insane," Jessica whispered, her eyes wide behind a gold mask. "How does Sarah even know about this place?" Sarah just smiled, mysterious in her crimson disguise. "I have my sources. Come on, let's explore." We drifted through rooms that seemed to multiply like a labyrinth. A library with leather chairs where masked figures discussed philosophy in hushed tones. A conservatory with a string quartet playing something melancholic and beautiful. A terrace where people smoked and laughed under strings of lights that looked like fallen stars. Everywhere I looked, there were men. Successful men, judging by their tailored suits and confident postures. They moved through the space like they owned it. Like they owned everything. Some danced. Some talked in intimate clusters. Some simply watched, their eyes glittering behind their masks. Told you, Sarah murmured. This is where the elite come to play. No names, no judgments, no consequences. A man in a black mask caught my eye across the room. He was tall, well-built, with dark hair touched with gray at the temples. Distinguished. He raised his glass to me in a silent toast, and I felt heat creep up my neck. I looked away quickly, clutching my champagne like a lifeline. Relax, Mia laughed, nudging my shoulder. Looking isn't cheating, but it felt like cheating. Standing here in this dress and this mask, feeling eyes on me like touches, feeling interesting, feeling wanted. When was the last time David had looked at me the way these strangers were looking at me? I drained my champagne and took another from a passing server. The night blurred at the edges, softened by alcohol and music and the intoxicating freedom of anonymity. Sarah disappeared with a man in a silver mask. Jessica was deep in conversation with someone by the fireplace. Mia was dancing, laughing, alive. I found myself on the terrace, breathing in the night air, trying to clear my head. The city sprawled below like scattered diamonds. Up here, the real world felt very far away. Beautiful view. I turned. The man in the black mask stood beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Cedar and something darker. Expensive. It is, I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. First time at one of these? I nodded. Nervous? His voice was warm, amused. A little, I admitted. I'm not really sure what one of these even is. He laughed, a rich sound that reminded me of whiskey. It's whatever you want it to be, freedom, fantasy, a chance to be someone else for a night. He turned to face me fully. Who are you tonight? The question hung in the air between us. Who was I tonight? Not Emma Harrison, devoted wife. Not Emma the nurse who always played it safe. Tonight, behind this mask, I could be anyone. Someone brave, I whispered. I can see that. His hand lifted, and for a terrifying moment I thought he might touch my face. Instead, he gestured to my empty glass. Another drink? I should have said no. Should have found Sarah and left. Should have remembered the wedding ring hidden in my clutch. Removed before we entered because Sarah insisted it killed the mystery. But the champagne had made me reckless, and this stranger made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. David looked at me and saw his wife, his responsibility, his domestic partner. This man looked at me and saw mystery, possibility. Yes, I said. Thank you. He guided me back inside with a hand barely touching the small of my back, and I felt that touch everywhere. We found a quiet corner. More champagne appeared, and we talked. About everything and nothing. Books, travel, dreams deferred. He never asked my name, and I never asked his. That was the point, wasn't it? To exist outside the boundaries of real life just for one night. You keep looking at the door, he observed after our third drink. Second thoughts? Always, I admitted. I'm not really the type for this kind of thing. What kind of thing? Secret parties. Mystery men, this. I gestured vaguely at the space between us, charged with something I didn't want to name. And yet you're here. And yet I'm here. His eyes behind the mask were intense, searching. Why? The champagne made me honest. Because I wanted to remember what it felt like to be wanted. Not needed. Not convenient, wanted. Something shifted in his expression. His jaw tightened. Before I could analyze it, Sarah appeared at my elbow, her lipstick smudged, her eyes bright. And we need to go now. What? Why? I stood unsteadily, the champagne making the room tilt slightly. Is everything okay? Sarah's grip on my arm was urgent. Mia's not feeling well. We need to leave, now. I looked back at the man in the black mask. I should go, he said, his voice strange, tight. Take care of your friend. Something in his tone made me hesitate, but Sarah was already pulling me through the crowd. We found Jessica and Mia near the entrance. Mia did look pale, clutching her stomach. Too much champagne on an empty stomach, she groaned. I'm so sorry, guys. I don't want to ruin the night. You're not ruining anything, I assured her, though part of me felt the loss of something I couldn't name. The spell was broken. Cinderella was leaving the ball. The same black SUV waited for us outside. The driver remained silent as we wound back down the hillside, back toward reality. I stared out the window at the disappearing lights of the mansion. That impossible place that had made me feel impossible things. My phone buzzed. David. Flight's early. Landing tonight instead of tomorrow. Can't wait to see you. Miss you. Guilt crashed over me like ice water. What had I been doing? Drinking with a stranger. Feeling things I had no right to feel, wanting things I had no right to want. I was married. I loved David. This had been a mistake. You okay? Sarah asked quietly. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The SUV dropped us at 5th and Main where our cars were parked. We said our goodbyes, made plans to have brunch and debrief. I climbed into my sedan, removed the mask, and let it fall to the passenger seat like evidence of a crime. The drive home should have been 15 minutes. I was barely 5 minutes in when I noticed the headlights behind me. Black SUV, tinted windows. The same one? No. Paranoia. This city was full of black SUVs. But when I turned onto Oak Street, the headlights followed. When I turned onto Maple, they followed again. My heart began to race. I took a random turn, then another. The headlights stayed with me, maintaining the same distance, never getting closer but never falling back. Someone was following me. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? I went to a secret party and now someone's following me home? I'd left my life, my husband, my safety for one night of fantasy, and now that fantasy had teeth. I made a split-second decision and turned toward the all-night diner instead of my house. Public place, witnesses, safety. My hands shook on the steering wheel as I pulled into the parking lot, flooded with fluorescent light. The black SUV pulled in behind me. My breath caught. I grabbed my phone, ready to dial 911, ready to scream. The SUV's door opened. A figure stepped out, and in the harsh light I saw the mask first. Black, familiar, still covering the top half of his face. The man from the party. He'd followed me. All the way from that mansion in the hills, through every turn he'd followed me. Panic and something else, something darker, twisted in my stomach. He walked toward my car with purpose. I should have locked the doors, should have driven away, should have done anything but what I did. I rolled down the window. Why are you following me? My voice shook despite my attempt at strength. Take off your mask, Emma. The world stopped. The way he said my name, not a guess, not a question. He knew. He'd known all along. With trembling hands, I reached for the mask on the passenger seat, but I'd already removed it. He could see my face now, exposed and vulnerable in the diner's parking lot lights. Now you take off yours, I whispered. His hands went to his mask. Time stretched like taffy as he pulled it away. And when I saw his face, really saw it, the world didn't just stop. It shattered. David. My husband stood before me, his expression a complex map of emotions I couldn't read. Hurt, anger, something that looked like disappointment. But underneath it all, something else. Something that looked almost like understanding. David, Words failed. What could I possibly say? Get out of the car, Emma. I can explain. Get out of the car. I did, my legs barely supporting me. We stood in that parking lot, two strangers who shared a bed and a life, and I realized we were both still in our costumes from the party. Both of us caught in the same lie. You followed me? I asked, my voice small. To the party? I was already there. His jaw clenched. I've been going to those parties for 6 months. Every time I told you I had a business trip. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. While I'd been home playing the dutiful wife, he'd been putting on a mask and becoming someone else. Just like I had tonight, did you? I couldn't finish the question. Did I what? Sleep with someone else? His laugh was bitter. No, I just went. Looked. Talked. Tried to feel something other than trapped in a life that was slowly suffocating me. Tears burned my eyes. I felt trapped too, like I'd disappeared into being Mrs. David Harrison and forgotten how to be just Emma. I know. His voice cracked. I saw you tonight. Saw how you came alive when you thought no one knew who you were. How you laughed with your friends. How you talked to that man. He stopped, his hands clenching into fists. How you talked to me not knowing it was me. We stood there in the harsh fluorescent light of the diner parking lot. Two people who'd promised forever, but had somehow become strangers playing dress-up in their own marriage. The autumn wind cut through my borrowed dress and I shivered. From cold, from shock, from the weight of everything unsaid between us. How long have you known? I asked. At the party, when did you realize it was me? David's laugh was hollow. The moment you walked in. I know the way you move, Emma. I know how you touch your collarbone when you're nervous. I know you. His eyes, so familiar yet so foreign in this context, bore into mine. The question is, do you know me? I opened my mouth to say yes, of course, but the word died on my lips. Because looking at this man, my husband who'd been leading a secret life for 6 months, who'd followed me through the city like something from a thriller, I wasn't sure I knew him at all. Why didn't you say something? I asked. When you saw me there, why didn't you just reveal myself? Tell everyone at that party that my wife had come to play dress-up in a world of strangers? He shook his head. I wanted to see what you'd do, if you'd go through with it. If you were capable of cheating on you. The words tasted like acid. I wasn't, I didn't. But you wanted to. His voice was quiet, devastated. I watched you with me, Emma. With the stranger you thought I was. You were more alive in those 30 minutes than you've been in our entire marriage. You smiled more, laughed more. You were the woman I fell in love with, but only because you thought I was someone else. The truth of his words was a knife between my ribs. That's not fair, isn't it? He stepped closer and I could smell his cologne, the same scent that had drawn me on the terrace. Tell me something. When you were talking to that masked stranger, when you were feeling wanted and interesting and alive, did you think about me even once? I had no answer. Because in that moment behind the mask I hadn't been thinking about David at all. I'd been thinking about freedom, about mystery, about being someone who hadn't folded herself into the shape of someone else's expectations. When did we become these people? I whispered. When did we stop being enough for each other? David ran his hands through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache. I don't know. Maybe it was gradual. Maybe it was the moment we stopped being David and Emma and became husband and wife, with all the weight those words carry. Responsibilities, expectations, the slow death of spontaneity. Is that why you started going to those parties? At first I told myself it was networking. Those aren't just parties, Emma. They're gatherings for people like us, successful, respectable, suffocating in our own perfect lives. People who need to take off their masks by putting on different ones. He paused, but then I realized I was going because for a few hours, I could be someone who wasn't failing at making his wife happy. Someone who wasn't watching the light dim in the eyes of the woman he loved. I'm not unhappy, I protested, but the words rang hollow even to my own ears. You're not happy either. Either am I. We're just existing, going through the motions, playing house. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. When was the last time you looked at me the way you looked at that stranger tonight? The question hung between us like an accusation and a plea. I thought about the past year, the perfunctory kisses goodbye, the sex that had become scheduled and mechanical, the conversations that never went deeper than what's for dinner and did you pay the electric bill? When did you stop looking at me like that? I countered. That's what I'm trying to tell you. David stepped closer still, close enough that I could see the pain etched into every line of his face. I never stopped. But somewhere along the way you stopped seeing me. I became the husband who worked too much, who didn't help enough around the house, who forgot to pick up milk. I stopped being the man who made you laugh until your sides hurt, who you'd stay up until 3 a.m. talking to about everything and nothing. Tears spilled down my cheeks, hot and shameful. So what do we do now? Do we just end this? Get divorced because we both went to a party and pretended to be other people? I don't know. David's own eyes were bright with unshed tears. Part of me is so angry I can barely breathe. You were going to, so were you, I shot back. You've been going to those parties for months. How many conversations did you have with masked women? How many times did you let someone who wasn't your wife make you feel wanted? Every time I talked to someone there, I was comparing them to you, he said fiercely. Every laugh, every smile, every moment. I was measuring it against what we used to have. Tonight, when I watched you talk to me like I was a stranger, all I could think was that we still have it. That spark. That connection. It's just buried under years of routine and resentment and... He stopped abruptly, his eyes fixing on something over my shoulder. I turned to see what had caught his attention and froze. Through the diner window, illuminated by the sickly fluorescent light, sat Sarah, and across from her, a man in a suit. They were holding hands across the table, leaning close, intimate. Sarah, who'd been so insistent I come to the party. Sarah, who'd dragged me into this mess, is that... David trailed off. Sarah's husband, I finished, recognizing Mark's profile. They're supposed to be separated. We watched them for a long moment. This couple who looked nothing like the cold, distant pair Sarah had described when she talked about her failing marriage. They looked the way David and I used to look, connected, present, alive. Maybe the party wasn't about finding someone new, David said slowly. Maybe for some people it's about remembering why they chose their someone in the first place. I turned back to him, really looked at him for the first time all night. Not as my husband, not as the stranger in the black mask, but as David, the man who'd proposed to me on a rainy Tuesday because he couldn't wait for the perfect moment, who knew I liked my coffee with too much cream and not enough sugar, who still reached for my hand in his sleep. I don't want to lose you, I whispered, but I don't know how to find us again. David didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked to the diner door and held it open. Come on, where are we going? Inside. We're going to have terrible diner coffee and even worse pie, and we're going to talk. Really talk. No masks, no pretending, no being the people we think we're supposed to be. Just us. I followed him into the harsh light and cracked vinyl booths of the diner. The waitress, a tired woman named Dottie according to her name tag, brought coffee without being asked. We sat across from each other in a corner booth, and for a long moment we just stared at our cups, watching the steam rise like ghosts between us. I miss you, David said finally. Even though you're sitting right here, even though we share a bed and a life and a mortgage, I miss you, Emma. The real you. I miss me too, I admitted. And I miss you. The version of you who used to leave me ridiculous notes in my lunch bag, who would dance with me in the kitchen at midnight, who made me feel like being together was an adventure instead of an obligation. When did it become an obligation? I thought about it, really thought about it. Maybe when we stopped making time for the little things. When date night became something we scheduled 3 weeks in advance and then canceled because we were too tired. When we stopped talking about our dreams and only talked about our schedules. I got promoted to senior vice president 8 months ago, David said quietly. I never told you because I knew you'd just see it as more time away from home. More late nights. More excuses. I'm being considered for head nurse at the hospital, I replied. I didn't tell you because I was afraid you'd feel threatened. Or worse, that you wouldn't care. We'd been living parallel lives, I realized. 2 people in the same house, sleeping in the same bed, but completely alone. Those parties, David continued, his hands wrapped around his coffee cup like he needed the warmth. I started going because James from work invited me. He said they were networking events for people who needed to remember they were more than their job titles. The first few times, I didn't even talk to anyone. I just stood there, watched people being free, and wished I knew how to be that person again. Did it help? Being someone else? For about an hour, maybe. Then I'd come home, see you asleep in our bed, and feel like the worst person in the world. Because I wasn't at those parties looking for someone else, Emma. I was looking for the person I used to be when I was with you, before we became so careful with each other. Before we started performing our marriage instead of living it. I reached across the table and took his hand. He startled at the touch like he'd forgotten what it felt like. Tonight, when I was talking to you, to the stranger I thought you were, I told you I wanted to feel wanted instead of needed. But that wasn't the whole truth. What's the whole truth? I wanted to feel wanted by you. I wanted you to look at me the way you used to, like I was the most fascinating person you'd ever met. Instead, when you look at me now, I see all my failures reflected back. The weight I haven't lost. The spontaneity I've given up. The woman who used to surprise you but now can barely surprise herself. Emma. David's voice cracked. You think I don't want you? You think I don't see you? I see you so much it hurts. I see how you bite your lip when you're concentrating on a crossword puzzle. How you sing off-key in the shower when you think I can't hear. How you still scrunch your nose when you laugh really hard. I see all of it and I want all of it, but somewhere along the way I stopped knowing how to tell you. Dottie returned with pie, lemon meringue, which had been our favorite on our first date 5 years ago. We hadn't mentioned it. She'd just brought it. Maybe the universe was trying to tell us something. We ate in silence for a moment, and then David said, I want to tell you something, and I need you to really hear me. Tonight, when I realized you were at that party, my first feeling wasn't anger. It was hope. Hope? Hope that maybe you were as unhappy with what we'd become as I was. Hope that maybe we both still wanted something more. Hope that we could find our way back to each other. He set down his fork and looked at me with such intensity it made my breath catch. When I watched you laugh with your friends, when I saw you come alive behind that mask, I realized you weren't becoming someone else. You were remembering who you've always been. The woman I fell in love with was still there, just buried under years of playing it safe. I was terrified tonight, I confessed. Not of the party or the secrecy or even of potentially being caught. I was terrified of how good it felt to be looked at like I was interesting, like I mattered as more than someone's wife or someone's nurse or someone's anything, just as me. Then let's make a deal. David reached across the table and took both my hands. Let's stop being husband and wife for a while and go back to being David and Emma. Two people who chose each other. Two people who loved each other enough to promise forever but who forgot how to live in the present. How do we do that? We start over, we date. We surprise each other. We take off the masks we wear at home, the responsible husband, the perfect wife, and we remember how to be messy and real and human with each other. I looked at this man, really looked at him. The gray at his temples that I'd stopped noticing, the laugh lines around his eyes from smiles I'd stopped seeing, the way he still held my hands like they were precious even after everything. I don't want to go to those parties anymore, I said. I don't need to be a stranger to feel alive. But I do need to feel alive, David. With you, in our real life, not in some fantasy. Then let's make our real life worth living. He squeezed my hands. No more late nights at the office unless it's absolutely necessary. No more Netflix and wine nights where we sit on opposite ends of the couch. No more going through the motions and calling it a marriage. What do we tell people? About tonight? Nothing. This is ours. Our wake-up call. Our second chance. He paused, his thumb tracing circles on the back of my hand. But Emma, if we're doing this, really doing this, we have to be honest. About everything. If I'm failing you, you tell me. If you need something I'm not giving you, you tell me. No more parallel lives. No more pretending everything is fine when it's not. The tears came then, full and cleansing. David moved to my side of the booth and pulled me against his chest. And I cried for the marriage we'd almost lost. For the people we'd almost stopped being. For all the time we'd wasted being strangers under the same roof. When I finally pulled back, my makeup was ruined and my eyes were swollen. But David looked at me like I was beautiful anyway. Like I was interesting. Like I was wanted. Take me home, I whispered. We left money on the table. Too much, but Dottie had given us more than pie and coffee tonight, and walked out into the pre-dawn darkness. The black SUV was still in the parking lot, a reminder of the night's surreal events. David's car was parked beside mine. I'll follow you home, he said, like I did tonight. But this time not in secret. This time, I'm choosing to follow you because I want to know where you're going, and I want to be there with you. I drove home through empty streets, watching David's headlights in my rearview mirror, and for the first time in years, I felt hope. Not the desperate hope of someone clinging to something dying, but the bright, terrifying hope of something being reborn. When we pulled into our driveway, the house looked different somehow. The same brick colonial we'd bought 3 years ago, but now it felt less like a mausoleum of routines and more like a place where we could build something new. Something real. Inside, we didn't go straight to bed. Instead, David pulled me onto the couch, not to opposite ends, but together, tangled up like we used to be. And we talked, really talked, about his fear of becoming his father, absent and distant, about my fear of losing myself completely, about dreams deferred and resentments buried and all the small deaths a marriage can suffer when no one's paying attention. As dawn broke through the windows, painting everything gold and new, David kissed me. Not the perfunctory kiss of a husband leaving for work, but the kiss of a man who'd remembered why he'd chosen me in the first place. A kiss that tasted like possibility. I love you, he said against my lips. The real you, not the person you think you should be. I love the messy, complicated, interesting woman who went to that party tonight looking for herself. And I promise to spend every day making sure you never have to look for yourself anywhere but right here, with me. I love you too, I whispered back, even when I forgot how to show it. Even when we lost our way, I choose you, David. Not the masked stranger, not the fantasy, you. We spent that morning in bed, not sleeping but talking, laughing, remembering. We remembered who we'd been when we met. Two people who couldn't wait to discover everything about each other. We talked about the future too. Real plans for real adventures. Not someday dreams, but next weekend promises. And when I finally drifted off to sleep in David's arms, I didn't dream of masked strangers or secret parties. I dreamed of us, of second chances, of masks coming off and truth coming out and love being brave enough to name its own failures and fight for something better. The invitation to the exclusive club was still in my email when I checked my phone later that day. I deleted it, not out of fear or guilt, but because I didn't need it anymore. I'd found what I'd been looking for, not in a mansion full of strangers, but in my own home with my own husband who was finally, blessedly, no longer a stranger. That night at dinner, takeout Chinese because neither of us felt like cooking, David raised his wine glass in a toast. To masks coming off, he said. To finding our way home, I added. To second chances. To us. We clinked glasses and started again.